Living in Victorian times. Wedding etiquette, traditions and costs. Wealthy Victorians were prim, proper and known for their propensity for luxury and buttoned-up etiquette. This is especially true when it came to marriage, a practice carried over from the Regency Era, which took place before Queen Victoria's reign. Let's take a look at what one might expect from a conventional Victorian wedding. Dowries, dresses and decorum. Uncovering Victorian wedding traditions and costs. Victorian weddings were important and elaborate affairs. Once an engagement was announced, duties and responsibilities were carefully mapped out and usually entailed planning that involved the bridal trousseau. The girl's father would present the bride-to-be with money for her trousseau, brand new outfits and other items to wear on her wedding day, honeymoon, and newlywed days. It was very expensive, as was the case for Bettina Rothschild, who came from a prominent European banking family. Her bridal trousseau cost a whopping 200,000 francs. Jewellery. When it came to the bride's jewellery, there weren't any hard and fast rules. It could be a prized family heirloom, such as a diamond tiara, that the bride would bring with her to her new home, or a gift from her husband-to-be. Wedding presents. Wedding presents were often given according to the bride's rank and status. If the bride belonged to a wealthy family, her relatives and intimate friends would give her costly bracelets, rings, and innumerable porcelain. In circles where there wasn't much companionship, the bride was given teapots, cake baskets, and other gifts that she could use in her married life. Ring. The groom buys the ring, and not just any ring, mind you. It has to be a sleek band made of the purest gold, with the date of the wedding and the couple's initials engraved inside. Paying the clergyman. Once the wedding festivities were over and everybody, the best man would stay behind to pay the clergyman for the services he rendered, which could be between $5 to $500. Interesting dowries and marriage settlements. While dowry is no longer a popular concept today, it was a tradition that Victorians prepared for. Let's take a look at its intricacies. What is dowry? Dowry, or the marriage portion, is a custom where parental property, material goods, and money were transferred to a daughter upon her wedding as an early inheritance. It attracted suitors and helped give the woman, and subsequently her children, economic security, while helping the family secure a desirable son-in-law. So, what became of women whose families couldn't afford dowries? Women's limited economic means limited their marriage opportunities, so their only choice was to become mistresses to men who could afford to keep them. Purpose of dowry in Victorian society. It was a reciprocal gesture made to the groom in exchange for the money he would have paid as the bride price. Otherwise known as bride wealth, it proved that the man could support his wife according to the social standard she was accustomed to. Another interesting quality of the dowry was it served as a conditional gift. Yep, take-backs were allowed. It was supposed to be returned in case the bride was mistreated or abused by the husband or in-laws, so it was an incentive to keep women safe. If the couple divorced, the husband would also have to repay the dowry. Examples of interesting and unusual dowries. Let's start with Anne of Denmark, wife to King James I. She received northern Orkney Isles and hundreds of thousands of pounds as dowry. Meanwhile, the 5th Duke of Devonshire gave his daughter, Georgiana, £30,000 as dowry to convince her to marry Viscount Morpeth. In addition, she was also allowed the use of their striking London residence, Lounsborough House. King Louis VII, the heir to the French throne, received the Duchy of Aquitaine, an entire region of France. When he married Eleanor of Aquitaine, one of the wealthiest women in Western Europe. The property was not for keeps, though. so Eleanor regained possession of her dowry when the couple divorced. Our notable mention goes to Violante Visconti, who received a massive dowry from her father, the Duke of Milan. In her marriage to Lionel of Antwerp, Duke of Clarence, the groom received 100,000 gold florins, a lavish wedding, and several towns in Piedmont. Marriage settlement agreements and why Victorian couples needed them. A marriage settlement was an arrangement that specified what would happen to particular assets and landed estates after the wedding. It was drawn up with the parents of the bride and groom as trustees as assets were passed down to the children sired through the marriage. Victorian wedding etiquette in 1852. Marriage in the Victorian era was the be-all and end-all of most women's existence. They thus had several traditions and etiquette that were carefully observed. Fixing the day. Fixing the date is an important part of upcoming nuptials. While the groom could push for the earliest date possible, finalising the wedding date was ultimately the bride's honour. How to be married. Once the date was fixed, the gentleman would decide how he wanted to be married. Marriage by banns. Banns referred to proclamations, notices that must be given to the Christian Church. They were public announcements that were published for 3 consecutive Sundays from the wedding, during which anyone could raise impediments, like pre-existing marriages, and lack of consent to make their objection to the union known. Bans were valid for 90 days from the date of publication. Marriage by common or ordinary licence. Applications were valid for 15 days in the parish or district where they were residents. They were also asked to give a sworn statement that there were no impediments to their marriage. The licence remained in force for 3 months. Marriage by special licence. Special licences were awarded by the Archbishop of Canterbury in the Doctors' Commons in London, so they were restricted to a special few. Think baronets, knights, judges at the courts of Westminster, and members of the Parliament. If they met the requirements, they could be married any time, anywhere. If you didn't fall into any of these categories but wanted a special licence, you'd have to get a personal interview with His Grace, which could prove difficult. Consent in the case of minors. If either party is a minor and cannot legally give their consent, the following authorities could provide consent for their nuptials. Father. Guardian, in case the natural and lawful father was deceased. Mother, only if the father and the legally appointed guardians were dead. Guardians set by the Chancery. Typically applied to minors who had no responsible authority to turn to. If minors didn't have any of the above, they could consent to the nuptials themselves. Who to invite? Weddings typically took place in the bride's home, so wedding guests were usually limited to the father and mother of the couple, their siblings, their immediate relations, and old friends of the families. Unmarried sisters often played the role of bridesmaids. Often, they were also the bride's favourite and intimate confidants. Meanwhile, the groom would invite his companions and closest relatives to be groomsmen. He also had his best man, who ensured that he carried the ring in the right-hand pocket of the wedding waistcoat. The big day. The day of the wedding would start with a hearty meal. After, the families would head to the church or holy altar in carriages. The bride would be dressed in a white gown and veil. However, other colours like grey or lavender were also acceptable. Bridesmaids would wear outfits that complemented the bride's dress. The groom, on the other hand, wore a tasteful black coat with a bow tie. The wedding procession would be headed by the bride and her father, who were followed by the bridesmaids and groomsmen. Once the bride's father handed her over to the groom, the couple made their vows, and the groom would give his bride the ring. The marriage was then deemed official and binding. Victorian weddings were strikingly similar to the celebrations we have today. Many of the traditions we honour in modern times came from this distinctive and unforgettable era. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoy our videos, please like, comment and subscribe to our channel and hit the bell button to be notified of new videos. See you in the next one.